Welcome to Confessions Beyond the Food. I'm your host, Nancy Redlin. Let's dig in and get inspired. On our last episode of Confessions Beyond the Food, I had a conversation about AI and the future of food service sales, and it ended with a confession. But what I've been thinking about since isn't the technology, it's the reaction to it. Because knowing what AI can do and actually changing how we work are two very different things. And if I'm being honest, I'm not sure this industry believes it yet. In this episode, I sit down with Ian Heller, an expert in AI and Chief Strategy Officer at Distribution Strategy Group. Ian has spent over 30 years in distribution, from operations to executive leadership. We talk about culture, resistance, and what's really holding this industry back. So let's jump in. Hey guys, welcome back to Confessions Beyond the Food. We're so excited to have you today, and we're so excited to have Ian in the studio. Welcome, Ian.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
We're so excited to learn more about AI and to bridge the previous episode. If you haven't checked it out, please listen to it. It's really cool. But Ian's going to bring it all together for us and land it. So excited to do that. We're going to do something a little different, be a little crazy today. We're going to start with Ian's confession because, as you guys know, if you've listened to any of our shows, is you have to confess something. So, Ian, tell us your confession.
Yeah. So, boy, this is a tough one, Nancy. I had to think about what I was willing to admit. What I came up with was, in the first half of my career, roughly, I was terrible at math. So I grew up thinking I was like horrible at math. And in fact, I flunked Algebra 2 in high school. That's how bad it was. And then I got to graduate school. I got my dream school, and my very first class in this executive program was financial accounting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to flunk out before I even start in this program. And the professor, Thomas Lease, handed out this form in advance because he wanted to know who was good at math and who wasn't, so he could direct the hard questions at the people who knew math, which I thought was kind of a nice thing for those of us who were bad at math. And I wrote on the form, I am the worst math student you will ever teach in your career. That's how bad I thought I was. And so he didn't comment on it then, but I took the class and I wound up getting a B in the class, and I got an A on his take-home final. And so he's handing back our tests, and as he's handing mine back, he stops and he said, I thought you said that you would be the worst math teacher I've ever had, but you got a B in my class and an A on my final. I've had many people do worse than that. And I said, yeah, I know, but you said your take-home final should take 2 hours, and it took me 12. And he said, I think I see the problem. Like, yeah, me too. I'm bad at math. And he goes, no, you're not. He said, you think that math is about doing the calculations, and you may struggle with that, which is why it took you so long. The more important thing is you did the right calculations. You chose the right calculations to do. And that's why you got an A on the test. He said, Ian, in the rest of your career, in your companies and in your partnerships, there are going to be people around you who are good at the calculations. So as you go through the rest of your graduate school program, you go through statistics and managerial accounting, don't worry about the fact that you struggle with the calculations. Instead, learn which math, which formulas, which calculations to apply in what circumstances, and what the outcomes mean, and have somebody else help you with the calculations. Because being good at doing the calculations is much less important than understanding the concepts behind when you use certain kinds of math and what the outcomes mean. And it absolutely transformed math for me. And I went from I'd be reading a white paper or, some kind of analysis. If there was a table of numbers, I'd skip it. I wouldn't even look at it, right? And then instead, because of the way Professor Lease framed this to me, I began understanding that, you know what? I can understand the concepts behind the math, which math to use when, and what the outcomes mean. It doesn't matter if I'm not good at the calculations, because I will have somebody else who can do that for me. And it completely transformed my career. And suddenly I was able to read financial statements, and I was able to engage with material that was more quantitatively oriented. And then a funny thing began to happen, which is that I actually got better at doing the calculations. And I realized the way my brain worked was I need to understand the context of the numbers that I was doing in order to focus my brain around the calculations themselves. And it completely changed my career. That little 1 minute conversation that I had with him and taking that class completely transformed the way I think about myself in math, and it completely transformed my career. And so I confess at one time I was truly horrible at math. And thanks to Thomas Leese, I learned I wasn't as bad as I thought and that there was a way around it.
Wow, that's such great insight. My son is actually in tutoring right now, and he struggles with the word problems. And
Yeah.
she was like, just think about it. Think about, like, would that answer make sense?
Sure.
And so the way that you frame math, I think, is in using your common sense. And I love that. I love it when people can speak into you and give you confidence and show you like how to navigate that. And there are people good that can do the calculations. And I think this is such a great confession because it really ties in to what we're talking about today is AI, is we don't have to know. I'm just guessing maybe this is
right.
where we might land. Is you don't have to know everything about it, but you need to know where you can apply it. Maybe, I don't know.
I actually hadn't thought about that. And I think that's a brilliant insight, Nancy. That's right. You don't have to understand how AI works. You have to understand what it can do and how to use it properly.
Right. So let's jump into this on the AI side. So is this moment with AI different from past tech shifts?
Yes. And there are really 4 reasons behind that. First of all, AI is the first technology ever invented that ultimately is going to be, and in many ways already is, smarter than humans themselves. Okay. And this has big implications because, when people talk about, hey, AI is going to create jobs just like it's going to destroy jobs. Well, that's always been the history of technology. The difference now is you could argue that AI is actually going to take those new jobs that it creates because it's more capable than human beings at so many things. So I think it may have a harder impact on the job market than people are expecting. Secondly, it's so broad. I mean, e-commerce was pretty broad, and just even though it was focused around commerce and about search and about research, it transformed the world. Well, AI is much broader. It's more like electricity, right? It's more like the invention of fire or the invention of electricity. It is, there have been recent studies that say that 80% of the U.S. workforce has at least 10% of their tasks exposed right now. And if you've used Claude Cowork, which I use to organize my inbox and make presentations for me and do research, I asked it to research 94 distribution stocks the other day, and it came back with an in-depth 6-tab spreadsheet, and it calculated all their financial ratios, done excerpts about their AI strategies. And it was incredible. I mean, it would have taken me a week to do that work, and it did it in half an hour. Third, the adoption speed is so fast because so it's the rate at which it's going to move through society, and the rate at which it is moving through society is just much faster than any previous technology. You can't ignore it. And then fourth, the fundamental difference between AI and other technologies is it's the first technology that improves on its own. It actually is a learning technology. Every other technology, you had to wait for humans to upgrade it. So the example I give is, my wife has a SUV and it has a bunch of technology built in to keep you a certain distance from the car in front of you and to keep you in your lane. And, it's got, of course, cruise control and collision protection, all that stuff. But it doesn't get any better at that on its own. I mean, you have to take it to the dealer and they upgrade the system maybe, but it doesn't get better at that. Autonomous vehicles do learn and get better on their own. And so right now we're at a point where AI is starting to improve recursively. So AI is improving AI, which means the shackles are off and waiting for humans to upgrade it. So as rapidly as we've seen these LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude improve, it's about to become almost a vertical line of improvement where it's improving at such a fast rate that it's almost beyond our ability to understand it. They're already doing things that their inventors don't understand. So I think just this, the pace of change, the fact that it's self-improving, the fact that it's going to take many of the jobs that it creates, and the fact that it's so sweeping, make it different than any preceding technology.
So when you speak at conferences, do you sense this urgency of this change or skepticism?
There was a lot of skepticism at the beginning. I think I'm beginning to see more of it be about urgency. So we just did our 2025 State of AI and Distribution Survey. We found that 88% of distributors are citing productivity and efficiency as their primary driver for AI adoption. I mean, I think they get it. The skepticism tends to be 1 or 2 levels down. I mean, in part because if you're in an executive leadership role, you're being pushed by your board to adopt AI. In fact, you could argue to an unhealthy degree because there are certain tasks that regular technologies can solve or that alternative approaches can solve, and people are adopting AI approaches anyway, right? So I think the skepticism that was healthy in 2023 has become dangerous in 2026. I mean, the technology is moving so rapidly, as I said, that, rather than, if you're asking the question, should we adopt AI, you're really behind. You should be already adopting it and asking about what you can do with it next.
So when it comes to a sales rep, I mean, that's what I do as a sales rep. So does AI threaten the identity of the sales rep?
Yeah, but it depends on the sales rep and the nature of the work that they do, right? So if your differentiating characteristic as a sales rep is you're the answer person, and that's, hey, I know the products, I know the pricing, I know what's in stock. Well, AI is it is eroding that value proposition because AI agents in particular are going to be able to do all of that better than most people can. But I think there's an identity that AI doesn't really threaten. And that's if you're truly a business advisor, where you understand the customer's operations and you can see problems the customer hasn't seen coming, then you're more valuable with AI, not less, because AI can give you better intelligence to work with. Right now, you can go into Claude and say, hey, I'm about to have a sales call with so-and-so at such and such a company. Tell me everything you can about it. And you're going to go in better prepared and better armed to provide value than you ever have been before. In fact, when we met at MOFSI, I laid out, 3 diverging paths, right? Outside sales, manufacturers, reps, and inside sales. I think the disruption timeline is different for each, but the direction is the same. The transactional part of the relationship is going away. There's still the strategic part. And so if your identity is built on transactions and being an information source, yeah, you should feel threatened. If you're highly about business advising and about relationships, I think you've got a lot more time.
Yeah, order takers beware.
Right.
So is resistance about technology or fear of exposure?
It's almost always about exposure. I mean, I think, it's socially acceptable to object to the technology, but I think it's really about exposure. So if you think about what an AI enhanced CRM does, it'll show you which accounts are profitable, which ones are not. It's really great at identifying patterns that even regular technologies find hard to spot and humans really struggle with. So you can see, buying patterns and measure wallet share, identify at-risk accounts, and it will help raise certain customers that you need to pay attention to before they call you with a complaint. But it also means you can't hide anymore, right? If you've been coasting on a few big relationships and ignoring the rest of your territory, AI is going to make that visible to your boss. So when someone says, I don't trust the data or AI doesn't understand my customers, listen carefully, because sometimes that's a legitimate data quality concern. Because one of the things that's still true of AI is it's garbage in, garbage out. If your data is no good, your output won't be any good. But a lot of times when people have those kinds of objections, they're uncomfortable because AI is revealing how successful they are across their territory and defining how they spend their time.
So what fears do reps rarely admit out loud?
First of all, I love salespeople. So I want to be careful I don't sound like I'm being too critical, because I think really great salespeople are extraordinarily difficult to find and incredibly valuable to an organization. But they're still human beings and they're not perfect. And, I think a common thing in distribution sales is account reps have more customers than they can really manage. And I think AI makes that apparent. It's going to reveal that you don't know as much about your accounts as you think you do, or as you pretend to. And so if you run an AI analysis on a territory, it's going to show opportunities that you just missed, and it's going to identify risks you didn't see. That's why you should be doing that analysis before the company does it, right? So you're using the AI tools; they're not being used against you. Second, your relationships might not, in every case, be as valuable as you thought. If a customer is ordering products on a scheduled basis and AI can automate that, well, you don't really need the rep to do that. But I think the biggest risk is reps who are reacting in fear to the technology, and they're thinking, oh, I'm not sure I can learn this. So if you're in your 40s or 50s and you think you can't make the transition, I would just tell you that I'm 62, and I find it the most fascinating and interesting technology I've ever come across. If I can learn it, you can too, but you do have to jump into it and spend the time.
So one thing I hear a lot out there is in different industries, and I've just been asking a ton of people around me lately, what is your hesitation and about AI? And I always get AI isn't accurate.
Yeah.
So are we holding AI to a higher standard than human instinct?
We hold all technology to a higher standard than humans, right? I think we accept a certain amount of fallibility in humans. I mean, look at the accident rate for autonomous vehicles. I mean, statistically, they're wildly safer than human drivers. They don't have road rage, and they don't drive drunk, and they tend to follow the laws and the speed limit, and they don't drive fast because they're they're late for work. So they're much safer, and the stats prove that. But they're not perfect. And so every now and then you'll see an autonomous car wreck, and, somebody dies, and all the comments are, this is why I'll never trust an autonomous vehicle. Right. So it doesn't really make sense, but that's how people are wired. They don't forgive technology mistakes like they do human mistakes. And I think you have to watch out. Right. I mean, I was interacting with, Gemini yesterday, the Google product, and I asked it about a certain physicist that I was reading about, and it said, and he died of an illness, or died of complications after surgery. And I wrote back and I said, I thought he was murdered. And it said, oops, you're right, he was murdered. I'm like, well, how do you get that wrong? I mean, that's, so it does make mistakes. And in some ways, Gemini is more accurate than the others because it's tied to Google. And so it actually uses Google in its search to try to verify facts, but it messed that up. And so I think you can't just take it at face value. And look, here's the other thing. When it makes stuff up, these are called hallucinations, right? And some of it is because they really don't have sufficient programming in there to say that it's okay to say, I don't know, in response to a prompt. But they're going to get past this, right? In my view, the hallucinations are probably going to come to an end, or mostly come to an end. But I think, the answer to your question is we're less tolerant of mistakes in AI and technology in general. And they still hallucinate, and you still need to verify important things. Like, I didn't just take that spreadsheet that I talked about earlier and publish the results from it. It's like, I appreciate having it, but I got to go in and double check it, right? And I did find a math error, by the way. It read a dollar number as a percent, and it had given me some incorrect ratios. And I read them, and I'm like, okay, I don't think that's right. And when I went and checked in that spreadsheet, it had some things wrong.
Quick pause to thank W3 Sales for sponsoring this episode. If you're looking for inspiration in food service, from the details that shape the space to the products that elevate the experience, W3 Sales' new online catalog is built just for that. Explore and shop anytime at w3salesonline.com.
So is distrust of AI about accuracy or about control?
Well, I think the accuracy becomes an excuse for discomfort about control. Right. And I've seen this before. If you present data to salespeople and if there's a couple things wrong with it, they disqualify the whole data set. I think, there's just a general level of skepticism. But, I think that it's mostly about the threat to losing control, but it gets framed as accuracy.
So transitioning to leadership and some of their blind spots, what do leaders consistently get wrong with introducing AI?
Yeah, AI is management infrastructure. It's a whole new way of organizing your company and getting work done. And it often is treated as a technology project instead, right? And so it's so sweeping and so broad, Nancy, that it should not be the sole domain of your IT department. Everybody needs to understand the capabilities in their role. So whether you work in accounts receivable or marketing or operations or warehouse management or fleet management or purchasing, product management, you name it, you should be mastering AI skills relative to your job. And a lot of people aren't, they're kind of waiting for that AI project to roll, or that AI project to roll out from IT. So I think that's one thing. I think the second, I'm hearing a lot of leaders say, we're going to implement AI, but we're not going to reduce headcount except through attrition. In fact, I wrote a column about this called the AI attrition myth. Well, here's the problem. 2/3 of people who leave jobs go to other jobs. There's a third that retire, they quit to go to school or take care of a family member. 2/3 of people who leave a job go to another job. Well, if all these companies at the same time say, we're not going to lay anybody off, we're just going to let attrition take care of it, that's going to run out of steam really fast. Because if no one's hiring, because the other side of the coin of we're only going to lose people through attrition means I'm not going to add people to my company, right? So there's this hiring freeze. That's the other part of that. So if everybody's relying on that strategy at the same time, there's not going to be enough new jobs created for anybody to leave for. There's not going to be any attrition. And so I think this notion that we're not going to ever fire anybody because of AI, sometimes it's disingenuous. Sometimes people just don't understand the dynamics, the broader dynamics and the math. But I would be very careful about saying that, because I think you may be in a position where your board's saying you're going to get 10% productivity gains from AI every year, and you find that you can't do it without layoffs.
So can a culture resist change even when leadership says they support it?
Yeah, all the time. And a lot of times the break is not between the CEO and the workforce directly. It's between the CEO and the person who's in the interim, right? So you may have a strong-willed VP of sales, for example, and everybody just heard the CEO at an annual meeting say, we're an AI forward company, we're investing in digital transformation, or whatever the technology is. And then afterwards, the VP of sales goes back and says, look, I just want you guys to focus on hitting your numbers. And you keep, the comp plan doesn't change, the KPIs don't change, and the culture winds up eating the strategy. Because culture isn't what you say it is. It's what gets rewarded, who gets promoted, and if your reward recognizes revenue, no matter how it's generated, and you're telling people the old ways still work, and you're tolerating people not using your CRM, and you're telling people digital adoption is optional. Culture change requires changing the incentive structure, not just the messaging.
That's such a good point, is that if we as leaders, because I came back and from listening to you, Ian, and I was so pumped up, and I told, sales, we're going to start doing this. And, inside, I want you guys to look at how we can be efficient. And so, but that becoming a KPI, which is we call on our scorecard, that they're measured, I'm definitely going to try to implement that into our scorecard. I like that. So
cool.
So let's jump into manufacturer reps and the digital shift. And for me, this is also my lane too. So I'm excited to hear your answers on this. So are manufacturer reps particularly exposed in the shift?
No, the opposite. They have more time. I think everyone's work is going to transform and everyone's exposed to a certain degree. But, just as background, I've been a VP of marketing for 4 large publicly held distributors, right? So Grainger, HD Supply, Newark Electronics, and Corporate Express before it was acquired by Staples. So I've worked with countless manufacturers reps over the years. And the good ones, and most of them are good because it's an eat what you kill business, right? So you don't last if you're not good at it. The good ones are already strategic. I can't tell you the number of manufacturers reps I know, and they understand what's going on in their distribution client better than most people at the distribution company do. In fact, when I get hired to speak in a vertical that I'm new to, like if I'm, if I'm talking to an industry and I don't have a lot of experience in the industry, I try to find a manufacturer's rep or two who's involved in the industry, because they know where all the bodies are buried. They know who's who in the zoo. They know what's going on, what the trends are, who the good operators are. They know, and they don't know this because they like to tell rumors. They know this because they need to have inside information on everything that's happening in the industry. Well, that kind of knowledge does not lend itself to AI, right? And the other thing they're great at is building relationships, right? And it's funny because I've been in when I was in industrial supply, hardly anything that we did was specification and bid driven, right? It was just need driven. When I was at Grainger, you needed something, I need it now, I'd order from Grainger. When I got into the construction supplies world, I thought, oh, I bet this is all about price and the relationships don't matter because everything's like, a lot of it's like sealed bids and stuff. Nope, just the opposite. Relationships were even more important. And if you were the sales rep at the construction supplier that had the best relationship with the contractor, you were probably going to get the order no matter what. These relationships are absolutely essential and vital. It's really what manufacturers retain manufacturers reps for, is that inside knowledge and that relationship. So I think they've got much more runway than most other categories of salespeople. Now, again, if you're just the answer person, and you manage orders, you're more exposed. But and by the way, AI is going to get better at all this stuff. So I think it's not that it's less risky, but you have more time to manage the risk and adapt.
I agree with that as a manufacturer rep. I mean, with all the change in technology over the past 5 years, and our job is to go out and specify. And so that's our job. We're the hands and feet of the factory, and to get out there and to make the specification and to know who the decision makers are, and bring those back through distribution. If you're doing that model, I think, to me, that's the direction my company will go with adopting the AI model. So,
right.
What cultural habits in distribution are hardest to break?
Well, the relationship I talked about is super important, but it's just a component of the strategy, and you don't want it to be the whole strategy, right? So I think, there's this sense that the personal relationships are the moat, and I think in some ways they really are, right? But I think you can't lose sight of the fact that ultimately it's about outcomes, because one of the reasons that manufacturers and distributors appreciate manufacturers reps is that they help them win more. And so if your win rate goes down, doesn't matter how much they like you, at some point in time, it's going to cause stress in the relationship and potentially fracture it, right? So you've got to make sure you're producing insights and solving problems and driving measurable growth in an ongoing way. I don't think that's different with or without AI, but you didn't frame this question with AI. So I think that's just a general answer. I think the second hardest habit to break is that our sales is purely an art and not a science. We have a long tradition of celebrating rainmakers, top guns, the reps who just seem to get the job done no matter what. And there are people like that. We've all worked with them, and they seem to be able to survive any transition, and no matter what happens, they're able to bring results. The problem is there aren't that many of those people, and you can't replicate that. And so if you're going to build a strong sales organization, you can't count on it all being top guns and rainmakers, right? There aren't enough to go around. And if there were, you couldn't afford to pay them all. And so I think you have to realize that, get those rainmakers where you can, hang on to them for dear life, but then realize not everyone's going to be like that. And so you need this more replicable, structured approach to sales for everybody else who's going to do a good job for you. They're B players, right? They're solid. They're going to make those sales calls from, morning to quitting time every day. And customers are going to like them, and they're going to provide good results. That part you can structure. And so there is sort of this blend of art and science where, you can't deny the top guns that are out there, and you may never understand them, but you also can't count on your entire sales force being that, because there aren't enough to go around. And so I think understanding that it's this mixture of art and science for most distributors is important. Does that make sense to you as a person who calls on a lot of distributors?
Yes, it really does. And I think one thing that we've been doing in terms of AI is, equipping them with the tools or knowing when to go to AI and say, hey, ask the customer ask AI what the customer might need. So I think it's equipping them with tools like AI and training and things like that, that you have to do, to get them stronger. And who knows, they could become your top gun in 5 years. So,
right. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's a good point, Nancy, is that sometimes top guns are made and not born. Mm-hmm. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah. I've actually, I don't know if I told you this, but we hire everybody outside the industry, and some of them haven't even been in sales. And we have one employee, she's down in Austin, and she was a bartender, and she is on fire. I mean, that girl came in guns blazing, but it was up to us to have the tools to give her to be successful. The training, you just can't, you got to continuously train and help them grow. So
how did you wind up hiring her?
She heard about our company through a friend. And when I talked to her, I said, listen, I really need an experienced rep down there, that someone, because it was an empty territory. And she stayed on me. She called me relentlessly. And I loved her persistence. And I just said, Vina, I can't afford you right now, but I'm going to figure this out. Like, I want you because I love your enthusiasm. And she just had such an interest and passion for the industry that you can't manufacture that. And so if I can find someone with passion for the industry and excitement, that's something you can't teach.
Yeah. I've been a professional manager since I was 24 years old. And so it's coming up on 40 years. And one of the things I've noticed, which I've never heard anybody talk about, is there does seem to be a correlation between how badly someone wants a job and how good they'll be at it if you hire them. It's like if they desperately want to work for you, they desperately want this job, and they're enthusiastic and they tell you how much they want it. And most of the time, those people do a good job if you give it to them. And so I wrote this column a long time ago called "College Degree Not Required," because, in most sales and marketing jobs and most business jobs, I don't care if someone has a degree. And I spent my corporate career wrestling with HR to get them to take college degree required off of my damn job openings because I don't care. And to me, if you're hiring a great marketer or a salesperson, whether or not they have a college degree is the same correlation as how tall they are. Who cares? It doesn't matter, right? And I'd much rather have someone who has the basic enthusiasm and aptitude and train them up on all the other stuff. To get someone who's got a marketing degree who, whether or not that correlates into them doing a good job in a marketing role is just a crapshoot to me.
Yeah. I mean, finding somebody that's just curious and willing to ask questions and grow, to me, that's also something that's super important. And the degree it may have prepared them to answer, to know that when you're hiring somebody without any experience, that they were disciplined enough to go through school. But in our job, just with all the self-autonomy, you have to be, a go-getter and a hustler and all the things. So, someone that wants to get better.
Yeah. I mean, a degree is great. I got 2 of them, right? I understand. It's great. It's just it shouldn't be an on-off switch as to whether or not you consider someone for the role.
Right. And honestly, with all these AI tools out there, I mean, you really don't need it. So,
Not like you used
answers
to.
a lot of those questions. It's really just knowing, I think, in what we do and having to know all the things is just knowing who and where to go to find the answers quickly. Well, let's go into something more personal and direct for our audience. So if I'm a manufacturer rep listening, what cultural shift should I personally make?
Well, I think there are a couple. Stop leading with products and start leading with intelligence. And that's probably a little bit overstated because ultimately a lot of times it's about products. And I think you still need to understand the products. And but I think you should rely on AI to automate as much of that technical stuff as you can, and then pay more attention to your customers. Take the time benefit from that time savings and learn more about your customers and their business and their strategy and networking the organization. So gain personal productivity with AI and then spend that time on the relationship and the business intelligence and strategy side. I'd also say, no matter how old you are, you need to embrace AI. I think so you don't get a break because you're 60. In fact, in my company, my business partner, who's a few years older than me, has a PhD in AI, and he's brilliant with it. our COO is a few years younger than me, and he's better with large language models than anybody I know. I mean, he writes code with them, and he creates these dashboards for us, and he could do anything with them. It's amazing what he produces. And as I said, I'm 62, and I work with it all the time. So I think, there is sort of this tendency as you get older to become a little slower to adopt technology sometimes. I think you can't give yourself that option anymore. And I also think that, if you're in your 40s and 50s, you're still in the prime of your career with AI, and you need to embrace it as fast as possible. So I think those are the I don't know if those are cultural shifts, but those are shifts that I would make if I was a manufacturer's rep.
Yeah, one thing, I do product training for my team every week. And I've started, instead of me going to all the different websites and comparing, contrasting, competition and benefits and all the features and all the things, I've really been using AI, and it's cut my time and just putting that preparation in it takes me a fourth of the time that it used to, and it allows me to do other things. So, and I'm not technological at all. And so I'm always stumbling around, but, I'm in the late 40s, not going to tell you specifically, but yeah, we can do it, you guys, we can do it. So, and that's one thing I love about the younger generation too, because they're jumping all over it. And I ask them questions, hey, how would you use this? And I think if we all think collaboratively across the generations, we can come up with some really cool ways that we can implement this in our businesses. So there's so many other things I want to ask you, but I'm so excited that you were able to come here today. I was deeply impacted from you being at MOFC, and I thought just listening to your your presentation and made my trip totally worth it. And so,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm just so glad I ran into you at the check-in after a horrible flight experience.
Right.
So getting to meet your wife, but I'm just really thankful you were here today. And I will link everything in that, Ian, your website, and how people can contact you.
Great.
You're a great resource for businesses out there that are looking to implement. So,
well, thanks. And we do have a conference called Applied AI for Distributors coming up in Chicago, June 23rd to 25th. We do have reps there sometimes, and a whole bunch of distribution companies. So if you go to appliedaifordistributors.com or go to our business website, distributionstrategy.com, you can get more information. It will sell out. So sorry for the commercial, but I do think it's highly relevant to the conversation.
No, I think that's really important. And this is for all different industries, correct? Not just food service and construction.
That's right.
Yeah, all industries. So wherever you are out there, sign up. I mean, Ian's incredible. So I'm sure I know he has so many more things to share with us. So thank you guys so much for joining in today, and be brave, get out there, you can't mess it up, right? Ian, just try.
That's right.
Play around. So anyways, we all have a great day, and I appreciate y'all joining in.
For more inspiration, follow our social media at W3 Sales. Please like, comment, and subscribe. All the things. We would love to connect with you.